Hey there, Blazer fans, and welcome to episode 34 of the Dragon's Den, a podcast for those that bleed green and gold. Today, I have one of the original pioneers of the UAB basketball program, a forward from Birmingham, Alabama, who played for the Blazers from 1979 to 1982, Mr. Chris Giles. Before we dive in, I will not have a This Week in Blazer History segment at the end because next week I'm planning to release a postseason special episode covering the notable NCAA tournament appearances from the men's and women's teams. Chris and I have a lot to get into, so let's go ahead and jump in. Thanks again for listening. All right, Blazer fans, I've got my guest here for episode 34 of the Dragon's Den, a former forward for the men's basketball team from 1979 to 1982, Mr. Chris Giles. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good, Will. Very good.
I'm thrilled to have you on, Chris. You were one of the legendary players. You were one of the pioneers for the men's basketball team. So I'm very excited to hear some of your stories. And I know my listeners are going to be excited to hear them too.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got a lot of stories to tell. And I'm glad that you given me the opportunity, to tell my story, the things that happened during my time at UAB.
Well, I'm thrilled. So, kind of giving my listeners a little bit of backstory into you. Before you came to UAB, you played for the legendary Cap Brown at Parker High School in Birmingham. We've had a couple of notable former Blazers that have played at Parker High School and played for Cap Brown as well. You went to Southern Illinois coming out of high school. What went into your decision to play for SIU?
Well, as you said, I played for the legendary coach Cap Brown. I had an opportunity to go to 2 state championships playing under legendary Cap Brown. In 1975, Parker High School won the state championship. We were 33-3, and I started in that game as a sophomore. In my junior year, we went to the state finals and we lost to Bradshaw in Tuscaloosa. And I played with a guard, Robert Scott. You might remember, played at the University of Alabama. Mm-hmm. But after my senior year, I was recruited by Southern Illinois University. In 1975, the guy named Richard Ford, who was the MVP of the 4A state championship when we won it, he graduated and he signed a scholarship with Southern Illinois. Well, the assistant coach, Herman Williams, he coached at Parker High School. He won 2 state championships there, 69 and 71. So he always came back to recruit guys out of Birmingham. So when he came and recruited Richard Ford, he noticed me as a sophomore. And he told me 2 years later, I'm gonna come back and get you. And so I ended up signing with Southern Illinois. I went for a visit. I liked the visit. And at that particular time, the Missouri Valley was pretty good, man. They had Larry Bird, they had Mo Cheeks, they had Roger Fagley, and then they had a host of other guys from the metro area that signed with the Missouri Valley also. And at that particular time, I was only 6'3.5", and I only weighed 164 pounds. So I was more like a swing forward or a 2-guard, you could say, back in those days.
Well, you played for Southern Illinois for 1 season, and then you decided to come home and play for the new upstart UAB program and Coach Gene Bartow. What went into you coming home and playing for this new team?
When UAB started this program, my senior year, Bartow came up to the school in 77 looking for players, but I had already signed with Southern Illinois, and he had just took the job, left UCLA and took the job at UAB. But the reason why I came back home, I was coming back home to go to Auburn University. The coach at Southern Illinois was named Paul Lambert. He left Southern Illinois, he signed with Auburn to become their coach. And they were bringing me back home, back to Birmingham. I was really going to Auburn, but what happened, that summer, he died in a hotel fire. Mm-hmm. So he never got the opportunity to coach at Auburn, and I never got the opportunity to play at Auburn. And plus, at that time, Gail Sayers, the Hall of Fame football player, he was the athletic director. So he wasn't going to release me to go to Auburn. And him and my mom, they kind of got into it, and then I said, well, she don't want me to go back, so I can't go back. And at that particular time, I was coming over to UAB. I was going to school at UAB. Mm-hmm. And those guys were having pickup games. And I knew Oliver Robinson, I knew Keith McCall, and I knew some of the other guys, Derek Bentley, who was signed by UAB, and I was playing pickup with them. And Lee Hunt, who was Coach Bartow's assistant, he saw me playing, and he asked me to come out for the team. But before I can come out for the team, I had to talk to Coach Bartow. And at that time, I think everybody was calling Coach Bartow wanted to transfer to UAB because his legendary coach is in the city of Birmingham, who's taken 2 teams to the Final Four, and he just left UCLA. So you can imagine all the people calling wanted to transfer to UAB. But I had an opportunity to meet Coach Hunt and to meet Coach Bartow, and they told me to come out for the team.
Well, that's fantastic. You sat out the first year of the basketball program due to transfer rules. UAB went 15-11. What was that first season of no play like for you?
Oh man, that first season, being there, watching those guys go 15-11, and the camaraderie that we had because we was all from different places. But sitting out, they had another guy that transferred from the University of Alabama. His name was Keith McCord. Oh man, Keith was a great player, man. He's the most talented guy I ever been around at a forward position. So every day we had an opportunity to practice against the team, whether we was on the scout team or defensive drills or so we made practice competitive because myself and Keith was sitting out, and those guys, we got those guys ready. 15-11 wasn't bad for a first year program. They lost a lot of close games, but they had a lot of talent on their team. Matter of fact, a lot of talent.
Your sophomore season, you finally got the chance to step in. And while you didn't have the same offensive numbers that you had in your first season at SIU, you contributed in many other ways, including rebounding. 4 times that season, you had games with double-digit rebounds. One of your toughest challenges, I assume, had to be when you went up against National Player of the Year, Mark Aguirre, for DePaul when they came to Birmingham. What was that game like for you, both environment-wise and going up against him?
Oh man, that was a big time game because the year before UAB had played DePaul, and I think he was a freshman then. And Coach Bartow always played a tough schedule anyway. We always played a tough schedule. So at that particular time, when I left Southern Illinois, I was probably around 6'4", 6'5", and I was a point guard at Southern Illinois. So I grew 3 inches, and I had to change my position from a point guard to a forward. And when you asked about those leading the team in rebounding 4 times and stuff like that, matter of fact, I started that year. Keith McCord hurt his shoulder, and I started like the first 4 games or the first 6 games until we lost against Ole Miss. But playing against Mark Aguirre, Player of the Year, outstanding player, big hands, strong, athletic, can shoot the ball, quick for a guy his size. And when they came to Birmingham that particular year, they was number 1 in the nation. And nobody has ever come to Birmingham number 1 in the nation or came to Alabama except for Kentucky. So here's a team from the East, DePaul, with Terry Cummings, Skip Dillard. They probably had 9 NBA players on that team. And to go out there and try to defend Mark Aguirre was a tough task. But I was up for the challenge, and matter of fact, he didn't get his average on me. So when a guy don't get his average on you, that's pretty good. And he was averaging 24 points a game, man. That's how good he was. And but to get out there in front of a sold-out crowd, probably the largest crowd ever witnessed a regular season basketball game. I mean, it was people everywhere. And to get out there, and we played them close. We had opportunities to win the game. I think the score might have been 54-52, somewhere around there. It was a low-scoring game, but there was a very talented team. They had a legendary coach in Ray Myers, and those guys were very good. Matter of fact, they were probably ranked 3 years in a row close to number 1 or number 2 in the country. And so it was a joy to play against those guys. That let us know how far we have come, at that particular time.
Well, in just your first year in the Sun Belt and second year of existence, UAB went to the Sun Belt Tournament Championship that year and played VCU. You guys had split this season series with them 1-1. Sadly, the Rams came out on top 105-88, and they were shooting 62% in that game. You guys still made the NIT that year, but fell by 2 to Southwest Louisiana, which is now Louisiana Lafayette. What was that postseason like for you guys in that season?
Well, that particular year, South Alabama was the team in the league. They really was the team in the South, in the Sun Belt Conference. And they had another squad, Jacksonville, out of Florida. They had a pretty good team at that time. And I think VCU was kind of like the newcomers, just like UAB was. And matter of fact, we played South Alabama at home, and they hit a game-winning shot at the buzzer to beat us. If they wouldn't have did that, we probably could have went to the NCAA as a regular season champions. But we ended up losing that game, and we went in the tournament. And the first game we had to play against was Jacksonville, which had a guy by the name of James Ray, 6'9", All-American guy. And we had to go against him, and we defeated them. And so we made it to the championship game against J.D. Barnett and the VCU. You know, VCU has always been a tough. And it was like a rivalry, you know, always been a tough game. And they were deep with players, and they kind of gave it to us there for a minute. But that particular year, we went to the NIT, and we played against Southwest Louisiana, which is Louisiana Lafayette. And they had a guy on their team that everybody knows. His name was Andrew Toner from Birmingham, Alabama. Now, Andrew and I, we went to elementary school together. And he ended up going to Glenn High School. And his sister, she ran track at Parker High School. Her name was Thomasine Toner. But Andrew and I, we went to elementary school together. My sixth grade year, my elementary school had a basketball team, Wilkerson Elementary. Andrew Toner, 8th grade year, we didn't have an elementary team. So nobody knew how good Andrew Toner was. But once he went to Glenn High School and started putting up big numbers, everybody knew who he was. But we had an opportunity to play him on the road in their place, and they ended up beating us at the buzzer. Matter of fact, that year we probably lost about 5 games at the buzzer. If we wouldn't have lost all those games at the buzzer, man, we easily probably could have had 20 or 22 wins. And back in those days, 20 wins was the magic number. You get 20 wins, you're most likely going to get in the NCAA. And with Coach Bartow's name and recognition, you know, that was the thing. Get me 20 wins and we'll get there. But at that particular time, we went to the NIT, and it was good to go to the NIT because that was my first time going to postseason play. It was a lot of guys' first time going to postseason play, except a guy like Keith McCord, who played at the University of Alabama, and they played in the NCAA when they played against Bobby Knight and lost. So, and besides Coach Bartow and Coach Hunt, those guys the only one had postseason play. So having the opportunity to play against Andrew Toner in the NIT, which is from Birmingham, and it was amazing. But they came out on top, and from that experience, you know, that myself and Oliver Robinson and Glenn Marcus and Donnie Spear and Raymond Galls, guys that was coming back, it prepared us for that next year.
Okay. So fast forward to the start of your junior season, 1980, 1981, UAB got off to a 7-1 start before dropping 2 in a row. One loss came to number 1 Kentucky in Lexington, 61-53. And the next, 3 days later, came at Iowa State, 71-70. Walk my listeners through those 2 games.
Well, in that beginning of that year, nobody expected us to do what we did because UAB had, I think, 7 seniors, and that the bucket of offense was leaving. So we got all these young guys and new guys coming in, and we started out, you know, we got off to a pretty good start. And when we played in the UK tournament, you know, we was just fascinated by the University of Kentucky, the facilities, the arena that they played in, man, and we lived in the hotel. So you leave your hotel room and you walk right down to the arena. So with 24,000 people in there, and you know, we were just amazed about their program and the things that they had. and also the players that they had. They had Sam Bowie, All-American, Melvin Turpin, and they had a real good team. So I think the first game we played against was Idaho State, and we beat them, and then we made it to the UK finals. And we was right there with Kentucky. Even though we didn't play out our best, Sam Bowie had an exceptional game in that game. He scored 27 points. None of those baskets was under the basket. They was all outside. Matter of fact, if the 3-point line was in back in he probably had 40, 50 points because that's all he shot was from the outside. And we went on and we came in second in the UK tournament. And then we had to go to Iowa State, which the coach at that time was Johnny Orr. Yeah, he was the coach. He was the Michigan coach. And all of a sudden he got that job at Iowa State. And we played them pretty well. You know, we was kind of off balance a little bit because losing to Kentucky and then going to Iowa State to play them. And they had a young team. So we played them close, but they end up getting us. And but we learned from that road trip. You know, that was a road trip that helped us later on down the line.
I mean, I'll say you definitely did improve from that road swing. UAB went 9-1 in the next 10 before a road loss at DePaul started a skid that ended the regular season, winning 3 of your last 6. How frustrating was it playing DePaul again and coming up short against future NBA players like Aguirre and Terry Cummings?
Well, the funny thing about playing DePaul is that, that game was on national TV. And if you ain't never played basketball, if you ain't never been on national TV, and that was one of my goals, I always wanted to be on national TV. And that game in Chicago sold out at the Rosemont. That was one of those new, nice arenas. And playing against DePaul, they probably was number 1 again. So we didn't know what to expect again because they had a great team. They had a lot of great players on that team. They had Tyrone Corbin. They had Skip Dillard. They had Clyde Bradshaw. All these guys were NBA players, top NBA players. And then to play them on the road, the one thing battling against Mark Aguirre again, I held him pretty good in Birmingham. But in Chicago, Mark told me, he said, Giles, I'm going pro. And what he did the next year, he said, I'm going pro. So I got to get mine today. And he was the only player that I guarded, great player, that ever got their average on me. Matter of fact, he got more than the average because he got 38 points and he had about 15 rebounds. But, Mark was good. I mean, he was a pro. You could tell he was a pro. He had some of the biggest hands for a player that you ever want to see. He weighed 235. So, me, I was still at I had gained like 194. I wasn't even 200 pounds. And I got to battle this guy, end to end. But he was a great player and they had a great team. Matter of fact, I think during those 2 years that we played DePaul, they might have lost less than 6 games, man, So that's just how good they were and during the regular season. But it was challenging. And those games really got us prepared for later on during the season and during the tournament because going against those guys really helped us. They helped our big guys. They had Terry Cummings and we had Norman Anker and Donnie Spear and Craig Lang and myself and Jonah Nicholas at the guards. And so it was a challenge, but we was up to the challenge because one thing about Coach Bartow, we never had a weak schedule, man. I mean, we played a lot of teams with a lot of great players during that time.
Well, UAB went on another run in the Sun Belt tournament, but fell by a point to VCU in overtime of the championship game. Thankfully, UAB finished with a solid record of 21-8 and earned an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament playing in Tuscaloosa. You mentioned the NIT helped your first round or your first postseason jitters kind of. So what was your first game like playing against Western Kentucky in a beatdown performance? What do you remember from that game?
Okay, and I'm gonna bag up a little bit. When you talk about the Sun Belt, at that time I said that South Alabama was the team to beat in the Sun Belt, where that particular year, South Alabama was ranked like 16th in the nation. And they came to Birmingham to play us. And at that time, we didn't have football, but we had homecoming for basketball. So we played them on homecoming night, South Alabama. They ranked number 16th in the country, and we had over 16,000 people. Probably at that time, it was the largest game for in-state teams. And that means South Alabama, Auburn and Alabama. They didn't have the crowd that we had when we played South Alabama. But that particular night, we ended up upsetting South Alabama. And so that would help us, like they do now with the quadrant wins and stuff like that. And like I told you, we played a tough schedule all the time. So that really helped us when it came to going into the Sun Belt tournament. Matter of fact, we ended up with a bye. So we only played 2 games. And the first game in the Sun Belt Conference, guess who it was? It was South Alabama. And South Alabama and UAB, we had to ride on the same plane on our way to Jacksonville. And South Alabama, they used to have this big old boom box. And they said, here come them Jaguars. We couldn't stand that song, here come them Jaguars. But anyway, we ended up playing them again in the Sun Belt tournament. And we ended up beating them. So now we play VCU for the championship game, early game, like 10 o'clock, and it was always a battle. One thing about VCU, at that particular time, they played a different style of basketball. J.D. Barnett was more of a defensive coach, a grinder ball, and, and it always gave us problems. And that particular game, we made some mistakes and we went into overtime and they ended up beating us by 1 point. But the thing I remember most about that tournament is that Donnie Spear, it kind of brought him out. He started to start playing a lot better, and Norman Ankern and Jonah Nicholas but when we lost that game, we didn't think that we was gonna have an opportunity to go to the NCAA tournament. We was all sad and we were disappointed. And when we got back home, the Sunday of the selection show, Coach Bartow called a team meeting in Belgium. And we didn't have no big flat screen. We had this little old bit of TV. And we sit in the gym. And so they were calling out teams the bids, the NCAA bid. And they had this basketball that rolled up and you see the team and you see who you're playing against. And all of a sudden, the ball rolled up. UAB, Alabama, Birmingham, with a record, I think we were 21-8, playing against West Kentucky in Tuscaloosa. We were shocked because we didn't expect to get a bid. We thought that South Alabama would probably get the bid because they were ranked all year. But because of our strength of schedule, because we beat them twice, and because we made it to the championship game, then we had an opportunity to go to the NCAA. And we had 2 teams, VCU and UAB in the NCAA. And then South Alabama went to the NIT. So there was 3 teams out of our conference that had bids in postseason play. But it was an exciting moment. I mean, Birmingham, because we was the only team in the state that was going to the NCAA. No Auburn, no Alabama. And then we was playing 50 miles down the road. And then we also had Kentucky in our bracket. So, we just played them back in December. And so we just couldn't wait, We played West Kentucky, but before we played West Kentucky, man, it's a funny story. We come into practice, the University of Alabama, which had a lot of Birmingham guys, a lot of guys we knew on that team, and they were recruiting one of the greatest point guards to ever come out of state Alabama, Enos Watson. And they were stretching, and we was coming on the floor. So we told the guys from the University of Alabama, we said, well, who the best team in the state now? Because they was going to play against, I think it was St. John in the NIT. So we're coming on their home floor to play in the NCAA. And back then, the NIT means not in the tournament. So you ain't in the NCAA tournament, you're in the NIT tournament. So once they finished practicing, then we practiced after them. But after that, after we practiced, West Kentucky came in after us. So West Kentucky, they was bigger, stronger, we thin, but we had size. And they came in and said, oh, UAB, y'all some little, and I ain't gonna say the rest of what they said. Mm-hmm. And we were just shocked. And Oliver called me Clyde, Oliver Robinson. He said, Clyde, you heard that? So let's don't worry about that today. We'll see tomorrow. And the rest was history. I mean, once that ball was tipped up, we didn't look back, man. And I think we ended up beating West Kentucky 94-68. In the last 30 seconds in that game, the guys that came off the bench must have scored about 10 or 12 points. Luella dunked the ball on the guy with 7 seconds left. And then Bill McCammon stole the ball and hit a half-court shot, at the end of the game. So our bench players, they played phenomenal. But we already had put the game away. Glenn Marcus had a phenomenal game. Man, good God Almighty. Glenn really, he pushed that ball and I mean, he played a great tournament, after having a disappointing tournament in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game and tournament game. But Glenn played phenomenal. He took us for a ride, and that was our first win in the NCAA. And the most important thing, the fans that came to Tuscaloosa that supported us during that tournament. It was unbelievable because nobody had been there before. We was the first team, so we didn't know what to expect. And the only somebody that knew what to expect was Coach Bartow. And he would always tell us, he would always call our team the February and March team. Because as you stated, when you look at our record in February and March, we didn't lose a lot of games. I mean, we always went on a winning streak. There's no team in UAB history has ever done what we've done. When it came February and March, we was hard to beat. And not only did we beat people, we blowed them out in the tournament. Mm-hmm. So, we was a different ball club.
Well, you mentioned them. The next game was a rematch against Kentucky. UAB faced the Kentucky Wildcats, who were led by, as you mentioned, Sam Bowie and Melvin Turpin. UAB did a great job of locking down Bowie this time around, and Kentucky struggled in the second half to get a lead. You had a double-double in this game, getting 10 points and 10 rebounds. What was the game plan like for this game, and what were some of the key moments you remember from this game? And what did this win obviously mean to you guys?
Well, it was big for us to play against the University of Kentucky again, but this time it was in Tuscaloosa, away from home. But Kentucky always bring a good following. No matter where they play at, they're going to always have the most fans. But Birmingham showed up and we showed out. And the thing was that was different than the game we played up in Lexington, that our big guys, Donnie Spear, Norman Ankrum, Sam Bowie didn't have 27 points in that game like he did up in Lexington. And they had a guard named Dirk Minifield, was pretty good at that time also. And he played well, but Turpin and Bowie, the big guys, didn't hurt us. Chuck Federber, he didn't hurt us. Hurt didn't hurt us. And then Glenn Marcus had a phenomenal game. I mean, he played like no other guard I ever seen. And him and Oliver, Oliver shot the ball. I mean, he was on and Glenn was on. And, I did the dirty work, and Norman Ankrum and Donnie Spear, they did the dirty work. And we just matched up because we can match up with people. They had Bowie and Turpin. We had Norman Ankrum, Donnie Spear. They had little Dickie Beard, a little bit of guard. We had Glenn Marcus. They had what's the guy just called Dirk Minifield? We had Oliver Robson. They had Cal and Herter. I can guard into those guys. And we had Craig Lane and Jonah Nichols. So we was evenly matched. And for the team we had, we were built like an SEC team because we can match it with anybody. And the thing was that Coach Bartow, he prepared us. He told us, hey, if we go out there and we play our game, and plus we can run. Like I said, we was a type team, that we can get up and down the court. And Coach Bartow, he never bothered us in the NCAA tournament. He always let us go. I used to tell people it was just like blowing up a balloon and letting it out, and the balloon just wiggle on and fly away. That's how we were. He never bothered us, man. And we always shot the ball well. We always rebounded well, but we can play defense also. So beating Kentucky was a monumental win. I mean, everybody, it shocked the world, it shocked the nation, because 1978, Kentucky had just won the national championship, and UAB was just starting this program. So in 81, we ended up being a team and a program with tradition. Not only with tradition, they had great players, all-American players. So it was a big win for us. It was big for the city. It was big for the state of Alabama. And it really put UAB on the map. And it was only in the third year. So, people started talking about UAB who, who are these guys? Who are these guys?
Well, yeah, you mentioned UAB was put on the national spotlight and it put you guys into the Sweet 16. The next win or the next game came against eventual national champion Indiana, coached by Bob Knight, and it was played on their home floor in Bloomington. The Hoosiers won 87-72. Indiana had 4 future NBA players on the team, including Isaiah Thomas. What about Indiana made it so hard to play against them?
Well, it wasn't hard to play against them because we're right in the game. The 15-point loss is indicative of what the score really should have been because Coach Bartow took us out early. When he took all the starters out, it was like a 3 or 5 point game until that time. But Isaiah being the great player that he was, I mean, he was phenomenal. And Ted Kitchell and Whitman and Ray Tolbert and Landon Turner, those guys were pretty good. And to play them on their home floor with 17,000 people in Assembly Hall, I mean, it was unbelievable. Again, Glenn Marcus played against the great Isaiah Thomas, played a phenomenal game. And we all pitched in, we all did what we supposed to do, but we was also in foul trouble. I mean, our starting 5 was in foul trouble. And we took the lead on Indiana. We were about to blow the game open, but then the fouls kind of hurt us. So Coach Bartow had to play players he ordinarily wouldn't play. He had to play them early. Glenn eventually fouled out. I probably ended up with 4 fouls. Oliver Robinson ended up with 4 fouls. Norman Akin fouled out. Donnie Spear fouled out. And when I went back and looked at that film, one of the things Bobby Knight did, he went small on us in the second half. He took Ted Kitch out. He put Jim Thomas in the game. So we were still big, and they had went small. But Isaiah was a phenomenal player, man. Hey, man, you don't need but one great player, to make things go. And he just turned the game around. Great free throw shooter, great jump shooter, can get to the basket, can handle the ball. But Glenn Marcus gave him everything that he can handle. Matter of fact, at the end of the game, Bobby Knight was at half court, and he shook and hugged Glenn. I don't know what he's whispering in Glenn's ear, but he said something to him. But he shook all the guys' hand because we was the only team in the NCAA that gave Indiana their closest game. They beat Maryland by 30 points. They beat North Carolina with Sam Perkins and Jane Worthy. They beat them by 20 in the championship game. So here it is, UAB. We played them the closest of all the teams in the NCAA. And that was just a feather in our cap, especially coming from Bobby Knight. He said that this was the hardest team that his team ever played was UAB. So, we were just bubbling with joy to hear that coming from Bobby Knight. And then eventually they went in the national championship. So, and then making it to the Sweet 16, I mean, it was big, man. I mean, I think Alabama might have went to the Sweet 16 at that time, one time, in their whole basketball history. And here we go. This is our third year, and we're in the Sweet 16.
Well, your senior season, UAB started off 5-1 before facing Georgia. UAB, you had a great game, scoring 22 points and grabbing 18 rebounds. You couldn't come out on the winning side. UAB fell 76-72. Talk about some of the stars you guys faced. I mean, we've already mentioned Aguirre and Bowie and Isaiah Thomas, and I'm sure there were so many more, but you faced another future NBA star in Dominique Wilkins. What was that game like?
Man, Dominique Wilkins, man. Let me tell you something about Dominique Wilkins. At that particular time, they had another guy on their team from Parker High School. His name was Gerald Crosby, and he played at Georgia. He was on the team then. And they had Vern Fleming. They had, I can't think of all these guys, but they had about 4 All-Americans along with Dominique Wilkins. because the next year they went to the Final Four. But anyway, playing against Dominique Wilkins in the Omni, he was just a different guy. Oliver had been to some camp with Dominique, and he was telling me about Dominique. He said, man, this guy here, man, he's awesome. You ain't never see, you think I can jump. This guy here, he's a different animal. But Oliver told me a secret. He said, if Dominique put both his feet together to jump, ain't no way you can stop him. But before he put both his feet together, stick your feet in between his feet. And that's what I did. But before the game, you know, the Georgia fans, it'd be like 5,000 in the arena watching Dominique warm up. So before the officials get out there, he dunking, man, he windmilling, he doing everything. We stopped warming up to look down there to watch him warm up. I mean, he's putting on a show down. I said, oh my God, he's putting on the show. And but we end up playing them. And I had one of the greatest games in my career at UAB. And what happened is that Dominique had to guard me too. So he wasn't a good defensive player. But what he can do, he can block shots. I think he blocked everybody's shot on the team. He had like 7 blocked shots. And but you know, he had to guard me and he had to get back. And I made him work. And that was his lowest point in a game. I held him to 12 points. Like I said, most people didn't get the average on me. Mm-hmm. Ricky Pierce that played at Rice, he didn't get his average on me. I had to guard Antoine Carr, Cliff Livingston. They didn't get their average on me. Ricky Frazier at Missouri, they didn't get their average on me. I shut down a lot of people. You know, I was the shut down guy. And all these guys played in the NBA. You know, the late Derek Smith at Louisville. No, he didn't get his average on me. You know, I had to guard the best player, whether they were guard, forward, center, whatever. And most of the time, they outweighed me. But, you know, I had that desire, you know. I can guard a guard 94 feet. Coach Bartow used to make me pick him up 94 feet. That means from end to end. I can do that, you know. But they had a lot of great players on their team. And everybody we played, like I said, had 4 guys to make the NBA. Wichita State, Missouri, Louisville, or Virginia. So these teams were very good teams, but we ended up losing to Dominic and George in the Con-State Classic. But before we played them, we played Southern Mississippi. That was always a good battle, Southern Mississippi. They had a guy named Joe Dawson, and he set the rebounding record that night. But I came back and broke his record and set a record in the in the championship game.
Well, UAB ended up winning 16 of their last 19 games. This won the Sun Belt Conference regular season title, and you earned a bye in the first round of the conference tournament. UAB got past South Florida and avenged the 2 previous title game losses by defeating VCU in the championship game. I know you mentioned it was kind of a rivalry, but what was it like to finally get the best of VCU in the title game?
Well, you know, like Oliver always said that finally VCU get opportunity to come in second to get a second place trophy. But that year there, you know, our junior year at the Civic Center, we went undefeated. And going into our senior year, we lose to VCU at home. You know, we only lost 2 games our senior year, the game against Louisville to go to the Final Four and the game against VCU during the regular season. And that's the only conference game we lost. And again, you know, we was picked to win it, and we ended up winning it all, matter of fact, the tournament and the conference, the regular season. But it was a battle. You know, over in VCU, Oliver and I, J.D. Barnett, so he and I put on a shooting clinic. Oliver hit a shot at the buzzer. We ended up winning the regular season, and then we had to play the tournament in Birmingham. Being 9-1, 11-1, it was tough. I mean, even in that game, you know, we played South Florida, which we always kind of beat. You know, we used to dominate South Florida, but that particular game in Birmingham in the semifinals, they played us real tough. I mean, they played us tough. And I fouled out in that game, but Oliver kind of took us home. I think he set a record for 7 steals and things of that nature. So we had an opportunity to play VCU again. And we struggled with them until like the last 5 minutes. Our big guys, Norman, Craig Lang, Donnie Spear, they really stepped it up. I think those two guys made the all-tournament team, myself and Oliver Robinson, and Oliver was the MVP of the tournament. But, our big guys, we stepped up and we kind of handled their big guys, and they had a real good team, and they had some young guards. So they was, our goal was to beat them. And the funny thing, my junior year, Coach Bartow and them and UAB, they bought us some rings. So they were silver rings. And we thought they were going to get us gold rings because we went to the NCAA tournament,
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Bartow, we was talking, and, all the players, we was kind of upset. And he heard about it. So he called a team meeting. I don't know if Drew Ferguson or somebody, our trainer, maybe told Coach Bartow that the guys were griping about their rings. So Coach Bartow called a team meeting. He said, I heard some of you guys complain about your rings and things like that. So he made a promise. He said, if y'all want gold rings, do what y'all need to do. You need to win the regular season and you need to win the tournament. And I'll get you those gold rings. And that was a goal of our team, because we wanted gold rings. We didn't want that silver that we got. So that's what we did, man. Everybody made a pact. And we was up and down during that season too, because again, we played a tough schedule. We played a lot of tough games on the road. And but when we got in the conference, as a matter of fact, I just looked at the schedule not too long ago. Coach Bartow, our last 7 conference game was on the road, and we ended up winning every game.
Wow.
The only game we lost was at home against VCU early in January.
Wow. One of the things like in doing my, research and going back and looking at some of these schedules and seeing some of the teams that, you guys beat and everything, what amazed me is just, and I love it so much, is just seeing, the avenged losses, getting the win over VCU in the conference championship game, beating Kentucky after losing to them in the regular season earlier in 81. Well, you had another opportunity to avenge another loss. You earned a first round bye in the NCAA tournament and you got a 4 seed and you faced a familiar foe, defending national champion, and the team that knocked you out the year before, 5 seeded Indiana. This time the game was in Nashville. UAB forced Bob Knight to do something you guys he wouldn't normally do, and that's called the first time out. UAB got up 26-7 to start the game. What got into you guys for this game?
I tell you what, when I tell people this story, only somebody know about this story are the players and the trainers. When we got to Nashville to practice in Nashville, they only give you like 40 minutes or 30 minutes to practice. And one thing Coach Bartow used to always say when we have shooting practice or practicing period, he used to always say, make every shot. This particular day, we made every shot. We didn't miss a shot. And he blew the whistle. He said, nobody take another shot. And everybody was looking at him because we didn't know why, because Coach Bartow counts shots all the time himself. He blew the whistle. He said, nobody take another shot. He said, what you guys have done is phenomenal. You guys have missed a shot that day, okay? And that's the practice day. Like I said, they give you 45 minutes. Well, that carry over to the next game. And the next day, when we got ready to play Indiana, we made so many shots. The announcer said, and they were laughing. They said, have UAB missed a shot? And the guy said, well, UAB is shooting a cool 80%.
Wow.
And we did not miss a shot during that particular, the first 5 minutes of the game. And that's why he had to call timeout. I mean, but we was ready. We for some ungodly reason, when we came in there, and plus we said that we wanted to play Indiana again. And Lord and behold, we played them again, and in that particular region, you had all 7 footers in that region. You had Uwe Blob, you had Sam Bowie, you had Ralph Sampson, you had the guy that played for Minnesota. Oh, I can't think. Brewer, Randy Brewer. So that region had all 7-footers, and we were always in a tough region. But that particular game against Indiana, we was fired up. We was ready to go. And we just, and our fans showed up too. We was close enough for our fans to drive up. And we just put on an exhibition when it came to shooting. I had one of my best games there, man, 17 points. And I was shooting them from deep. Norman Ankrum, the big guys were shooting jumpers. So, and we was like that. Once we started making shots, oh, you can forget it now. And I don't think there's ever been a team at UAB, and I've been around, they never had a team that could shoot the ball like us in the tournament. In the tournament play, we was a different animal, man. We really came out and we accepted the challenge, and we accepted it well.
Well, UAB won 80-70, and because you had already had the bye, UAB advanced to the Sweet 16. This meant you got the chance to play at home at the BJCC because Birmingham was one of the regional locations, but you had to play the number 3 ranked and number 1 seeded Virginia Cavaliers, who were led by All-American Ralph Sampson. Walk my listeners through the buzz around the game and going up against Sampson.
Well, it was like something I never seen, and probably people in Birmingham never seen. Getting back to the Nashville, playing in the tournament, we was one of the last teams where you didn't have a jump ball anymore after each half, and we were one of the last team to have a bye. They don't even do that anymore. But coming back home to Birmingham, it was different. All the media that you ever wanted to see coming into Birmingham. And, during the practice time, Coach Bartow would get up on a chair and pretend he was Ralph Sampson, and we had to shoot over the broom, because he was just emulating the length and the height of Ralph Sampson and the things that he can do. But one of the things that really I was amazed about, they had the Hill Center. They had just built the Hill Center and had a big old sign out there. And Oliver and I was coming from class, and they said on the sign, the game UAB in Virginia sold out. And it was people all on our campus looking for tickets, asking us for our tickets and things of that nature. And Birmingham, it was just unreal. At that particular time, they used to put little cameras on the backboard. So when a person dunked, they would take a picture, And it was just doing stuff like that, stuff that we had never seen. And the atmosphere was like being at the Final Four. Once I started going to the Final Four as a coach, and I should see the things Coach Bartow was talking about. One of the things we practiced after Ralph Sampson practice. So in the BJCC, it was over 8,000 people in there to watch practice.
Wow. And
to watch Virginia and Ralph Sampson. But they also watched us because we was coming in later. And I never forget, when we came in that arena, the people from Birmingham, they stood up and gave us a standing ovation because they were called the team that's coming next to practice. They were called University of Alabama and Birmingham up next or whatever. And we walked in there, man. I just couldn't believe it. That many people was in, and they gave us a standing ovation because, whether you was an Auburn fan or Alabama fan or whatever, they supported us. We was the home team, everybody supported the home team in Birmingham. Everybody supported us, and they wanted us to win. So it was so much of a buzz around there. We didn't know how to act. The interviews and the people coming up to us and the newspaper, we had our local newspaper. When you got people from New York and California and Chicago, you spend more time in the interview room than you do practice because everybody want to know, their tape. You just beat Bobby Knight and Indiana, defending national champion. They wanted to know, about what you guys going to do against Ralph Sampson, 2-time player of the year. So we had all this, it was kind of, and then you couldn't stay in the hotel, you couldn't stay in your room. So they had to put you up in the hotel. So that took a little bit different away from you. You still had to go to class, So it's different than being on the road. At the road, you ain't got to do nothing but lay in the bed and go to practice. But at home, you still got to, everything still has to be the same. The only thing was different that you couldn't live in the dorm. You had to live in the hotel where the NCAA put you up at. But, you know, getting ready for Virginia and Ralph Sampson, they had a good team, man. They was picked to win it, you know, versus North Carolina, which North Carolina ended up winning, but Virginia was the team that everybody, I don't think they lost them in the games in the ACC. But we had just saw Virginia. Matter of fact, the week before they played Louisville, the last game of the season. And they demolished Louisville. And we were like, oh man, now we got to play Ralph Sampson. We ain't never seen or played against a guy like him. He was a different guy. Big guy, he was skillful, he was quick, he was athletic. But a lot of people don't know the last 18 minutes of the ball game, Ralph Sampson didn't score against us. We shut him down. I mean, he ended up with a dunk. I think that's the only thing, but the game was over with. We was up 4, I think, and we let him get that dunk, and we ended up winning the game. But that was history, man. You know, that was history. That was college basketball to me at its best. That you're going against guys that had phenomenal skill, phenomenal players, and you were seeing guys that you knew was going to be NBA Hall of Famers, and they were going to play in the NBA for some years. And but the excitement was phenomenal. And you know, UAB, they only had 4 buildings on their campus. We didn't have a great gym. You know, we didn't have anything. You know what I'm saying? We played on blood and guts. You know. And everybody that was at UAB wanted to be at UAB. We took pride in what we was doing. You know, not like it is now. They got the dorms, they got their own campus arena. You know, they have all those things now that we never had. You know, the Civic Center at the time, they had hockey, so they had ice, you know, and if it got wet, it might come on the floor, you know, so it's a lot of things that we had to go through, but we end up, you know, doing the best that we could, you know, at that particular time.
Well, UAB didn't hit a basket for the final 7-18, but you nailed the free throws down the stretch. I believe hitting around like 11 of the last 14, and UAB won 68-66. What was the feeling like on the team after that win?
Oh man, we was on cloud 9. Let me tell you this. You know, I think the game started at 9:40 or whatever. That game didn't end to probably about 12 something. Okay. And we stayed down at the Holiday Inn, used to be the old Parliament House. They changed the name on 20th Street. And so after we beat Virginia, the only 3 people was left was Coach Bartow, myself, and Oliver Robinson in the press conference. Because we got all these news people, they just kept everybody stunned that we beat Virginia. They were looking for a Ralph and a Patrick Ewing matchup. So the whole town is a buzz. So Drew Ferguson, our trainer, he had to take Oliver and I back to the hotel. Man, down 20th Street, you could hear the cars, people blowing their horns, people running around. It was unbelievable. We couldn't even get in the hotel, man. People were just there, want to touch us, hug us. You know, they were so excited. You know, and we thought we had won. It felt like we had won the national championship, to be honest with you, because people was everywhere that night. People was partying, you know, and it was just almost like we know UAB going to the Final Four. They didn't beat Virginia, you know, and it was just unbelievable. But the next day, they came and got Drew Ferguson came and got Oliver and myself out of class. We had to have a press conference again. And them same news reporters, man, they hadn't even changed clothes. They were still there. They were still amazed. And one guy asked Oliver, because Oliver had a great game. He asked Oliver, what did he eat for breakfast that morning? Oliver said some Cheerios. Man, I almost fell out the podium. You know, because they still stunned that here UAB, this upstart program, 4 years in existence, you know, in the Elite Eight. In the Elite Eight. And we didn't know nothing about that, man. We didn't know nothing about no Elite Eight and Sweet 16 and stuff like that. We still learning. But the good thing about Coach Bartow, every year, he always said, you know, the Final Four. You need to get to the Final Four. And if you want to get to the Final Four, this is what you got to do. You got to be like the North Carolinas, the UCLA, the Indianas. He should name all the top programs. He planted that seed in our head every year. I can hear him now, get 20 wins, get to the tournament. And we got there. And like I said, again, it was new. The University of Alabama, they hadn't been to the Elite Eight. Nobody in the state of Alabama had been to the Sweet 16, then the next year the Elite Eight. So in my career, I've been to 3 Sweet 16 because I've been 1 as a coach, 2 as a player, and I've been to Elite 8 as a player. But nobody at that particular time, had ever done that. So everybody's buzzing, little UAB, but they're playing big. They used to call us, see, like they're saying now, bracket buster. That's what we were. See, we was the bracket buster. When they said the first team to get to the Final Four with 3 letters on their chest, it was VCU, but it should have been UAB. You see what I'm saying? We should have been the first team with 3 letters on our chest to make it to the Final Four.
Well, UAB faced Louisville in the Elite Eight. The game was tight throughout, but the Cardinals came out on top 75-68. Obviously, you guys wanted to keep winning, but what did that season mean to you and your teammates?
Oh, man, we was – to play Louisville, we were a mirror image of each other, but they had better depth. You know what I'm saying? See, they scored 39 points off the bench. I think we might have scored 6 because we locked up their starters. When it came to the top 7, we was there, but Charles Jones scored 19 points off the bench. Milt Wagner scored 10 points, and then Lancaster Gordon, and then you had Poncho Wright, and you had Scooter McCray. So they had all these guys played in the NBA. They got 11 NBA players out there, future NBA players, and we got 4 NBA drafts at UAB. But playing at home, Louisville bring a good crowd, and we was hurt because we really wanted to make it to the Final Four. It was a tight game. Again, one of those games where the starters, we was in foul trouble. Eventually I fouled out, but everybody on the starters had 4 fouls. So we got to watch how we play. But in the first half, before halftime, Louisville, like they was blowing us out, and they were. But in the second half, we came back and we took the lead, but we couldn't maintain the lead. And then when I fouled out and a couple of mistakes here and there that wouldn't probably happen if I was in the game, they end up beating us. But we were disappointed, but we was also excited because the buzz was still there in Birmingham. People was talking about UAB basketball all around the world, all around the country. And the buzz stayed for a long time. And eventually it helped in recruiting Steve Mitchell and Jerome Minson them, who kept it going. UAB went to like 7 straight NCAAs after that, So that kept it going. It kept that spirit. It kept people excited about UAB basketball. It changed a lot, I think that what we did created all that. And they're trying to get it back. They're trying to get it back. They want to get it back. But we were just special, man, and the players that we played against, Donnie Spear and played with, Craig Lane and Jonah Nicholas, Craig and Jonah they were junior college All-Americans. So they came and they plugged in with us. Donnie and Oliver Robinson, they was kind of like freshmen. They were with the original group. I transferred. So, but for us to mesh in 2 years, Norman Ancrum came back home. He played at Alabama with the Chapel. So for us to get together in that little short period of time, so we were destined, by God, by faith or whatever that brought us together. We came together and we did something special. And I'm glad you're doing this, man, because they should always look at us and thank us for what we did. Because most people don't realize that to keep it going, but to start something and get people to believe in it. Ticket sales was up. Merchandise was up. Everything was up. I mean, Alabama and Auburn had got their program off the ground. They were still, they were like, hey, we got to do something because these upstarts over here, they really doing what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they supposed to have all the great players, Auburn and Alabama, because somebody had wrote an article. They said that UAB, it was our junior year, and somebody posted it back in the locker room. They said UAB is a bunch of transfers and misfits. Well, I was a transfer, but I didn't know where the misfits come from, what they meant by that, misfits. So for us to come together and do what we needed to do to create this excitement in this program, and man, we had they had some for us every weekend. Somebody wanted us to, the city of Bessemer gave us a key to the city. Mayor Arrington had some for us. So, I mean, people showered us, they really did.
What are some other games that you look back on from your UAB career and you remember fondly?
Oh man, it was so many, man. Those NCAA tournament games were, they was. But to play Wichita State, they had Antoine Clark, Cliff Livingston, Xavier McDaniels. They had all these great players, man. Aubrey Sherrod, Greg Drylins. To play against them, night in and night out to play against them. And then Missouri, they had Ricky Frazier. We ended up beating Michigan, which was big. They one of the blue bloods, and we ended up beating them. But we had so many teams and fond memories, but not like those NCAA tournament games, because that was just something that you don't see. And we finished 4-2 in the NCAA. You go back and you look at the records of teams that played in the NCAA at that particular time. UAB was 4-2, and we was probably to play 6 games, a minimum of 6 games. We was right there. And then I think we averaged like 80-some points a game. No somebody averaged more points than us than 81 in the NCAA tournament was Indiana with Isaiah Thomas. All these things that we accomplished and what we did. We were 48-15 in 2 years at UAB. 48-15. We lost 2 home games. And when you look back on our record, there's no team in the UAB history has done what, to this day, done what we've done. And that's the standard. They always talk, nobody say that, hey, we're trying to, most teams say, well, we shooting for the best team. We shooting for their records. We shooting for what they did. We set the standards, Those are the standards. When I look at the UAB teams now, that's what you should be trying to get. You should be trying to get to the Final Four, because we done already been to the Sweet 16, Elite 8. Now we need somebody to go to the Final Four. And that should be the goal of any team. And see, we didn't have nobody in front of us that said, except for that NIT team. And so, like I said, that team now, it gave us that feeling of postseason play, and we took it from there.
So you were selected in the 5th round of the NBA draft by the New Jersey Nets, and you also played professionally for the Wisconsin Flyers of the Continental Basketball Association. What was professional basketball like?
Oh man, it was unbelievable, because the funniest thing is that, you have all these people calling you. Number one, you have all these agents coming down here. We had more agents down here than you can shake a stick, because what we did, everybody like, wow. So we attracted so many people, in the sports business. So I didn't know nothing about agents and stuff like that. Coach Bartow called us in the office and said, this guy want to meet with you and take you out to dinner and things like that. But I thought I was going with the Golden State Warriors, because that's what everybody was telling me, that I was going in the 3rd round with Golden State, blah, blah, blah. And that particular time, a young man named Eddie Phillips, he played at the University of Alabama. Well, when I was at Parker High School, Eddie Phillips played, my senior year, he played 3 games with me. And then his senior year, because he was a football player, he became a basketball star, signed with Alabama. So he and I got drafted by the same team, New Jersey. Huh. He went in the 1st round. I went in the 5th round. I was 105th player, 103rd player taken in the draft. And when I got drafted, they take you out to California to play in the summer league. Well, I went out to California and I played in the summer league. I was starting with New Jersey net. So now I'm thinking I'm going to make the team. My agent kept on saying, look, you ain't going to make this team. They got 2-minute no-cut contracts. And the only 2 people they're going to sign is Eddie Phillips out of Alabama. And they're going to sign Sleepy Floyd from Georgetown. So, and he was telling me, well, I'm like, no, I think I got a chance to make this team. New Jersey didn't cut me. They traded me to the Indiana Pacers. That's who I got cut by, the Indiana Pacers. So at that particular time, the NBA is not like it is now. Back then they had 15 players. No, they had 15 players and X amount of coaches, but they started cutting back to like 11 players and stuff like that. I probably would have made somebody roster, but I went to the CBA, Wisconsin Flyers. And I started with Wisconsin Flyers. I averaged like 15 points a game and 7 rebounds. I played my best basketball doing that after I left UAB. Because at UAB, I was kind of restricted. But there, I was a little bit more open. So I was excited, because I reached all my goals in high school. In high school, I grew up in Smithfield Project, right down there by Legion Field. And one time I had wrote on the wall in my room all the things I wanted to accomplish out of basketball. Number 1, I wanted a scholarship. Number 1, I wanted to be a champion. Number 2, I wanted to go to a college where I could be on TV a lot. UAB gave me all of that. I wanted to be ranked. We were ranked our junior year. We were ranked our senior year. I wanted to be drafted in the NBA. I was drafted in the NBA. And so all these things that I had wrote down, I accomplished those things. And the majority of it was at UAB. And it was a fun ride. We had great times. Getting in the NBA, being drafted, playing against different players that I saw on TV, that I read about. But see, I wasn't a big guy. I wasn't even 200 pounds my senior year, And the guy that drafted me, he said the problem that I had is that I can do everything. See, if they were looking for the Dennis Rodmans back then, I probably would have been the Dennis Rodman, but they weren't looking for them guys back then like that. They were looking for guys that can score. You had to be able to score in the NBA, and you have to be able to score a lot.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed going to those camps, playing against those guys. We had 4 guys on our team drafted. Oliver Roberts in the 2nd round, Norman Ankrum in the 4th round, Chris Giles in the 5th round, Donnie Spear in the 6th round. Out of the Sun Belt Conference, you know how many players were drafted out of the Sun Belt Conference our senior year? 17 players.
Wow.
South Alabama had 4. So, man, it took a miracle to make the NBA. When you look at all the players at your conference that got drafted, we ain't talking about the ACC or the SEC. The Sun Belt Conference had the most people drafted out of the conference.
Wow.
And we had 17, and so it was amazing that you get drafted. And back then, the rounds was they go to 11 or 12 rounds. So, a lot of people had an opportunity to get drafted. But I enjoyed it. I mean, I reached my goals. I did everything I wanted to in basketball. In coaching, I'm the only guy at UAB that been the majority of the postseason as a player, as a coach, as a graduate assistant, as a part-time coach, as a full-time coach. If you look at my resume, you'd be like, wow, man, look at this guy. There's nobody. Only somebody probably been to more NCAA tournaments, probably Coach Bartow, from UAB. But as a player, coach, I'd have been to 8 of them.
Well, Chris, you're absolutely right about, being involved in every aspect of the NCAA tournament appearances while you have been at UAB. Not only as a player, but as a coach, you were involved, if I'm correct, in every single NCAA tournament win, in some way, either coaching or playing, while you were at UAB. Every tournament win for UAB, you were there up until the 2015 win over Iowa State. every NCAA tournament win up until that point, you were involved in some way. So we do owe you a ton of gratitude. And, you have been one of the great players and coaches. There is no doubt. So we do. It's crazy to think about that, just how much you have been involved.
So all the postseason play that UAB was in, I was involved in. Some people just be riding the wave. I didn't ride the wave. I mean, I actually had to work, and I was actually involved in them. And I don't even get mention of as a player, as an administrator, being a coach or whatever. I don't even, and it bothers me sometimes, man. But to be honest with you, and they don't know that. They don't recognize that. The people over there, that's why I say, they don't tell the real history, It's like they were talking about that little advertising, cutting down the nets. How are you going to talk about cutting down the nets if you don't have the 81, 82 team up there? We cut down the first nets. I mean, you didn't have nothing on our team. Holding the first trophy, we weren't even there. Like, we never existed. And I just don't, I'm a history buff. Mm-hmm. And I believe some start somewhere. We should never die. No, we should never die. It's just like down at the University of Alabama. The 1925 Rose Bowl team would never die down on the Crimson Tide. Why? Because they won a national championship and they set the standard. Until somebody surpass us, we are the standard. We are the standard. I don't care how you look at it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. And trust me, and that's one thing that my dad passed on to me, was that he always said, he always went back to the original teams, the 81, 82, and all these guys. You guys did set the standard, and it's true. We
all graduated.
Definitely.
We weren't bad people. We all graduated.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, what we did, when you go back and say, golly, and it's been 40 years, and see, we did it so early, so that's one of the problems. Because you do the first 4 years, you do all this stuff, and then everybody else mediocre behind you, so they don't remember. Like you said, the young kids don't remember. They will remember if somebody talked about it a lot. We don't even, when it comes to NCAA play, or when it comes to, we don't get no articles on us. Nobody talks about us. Nobody said, well, back in the day, can you remember back down in 82 when UAB beat Virginia? And, like I see other cities do. Where are they now? What happened back in 1980? Just bring back fun memories, rekindle some fire, oh man, yeah, I remember those days. I mean, people, when they see me, they say that, but you're supposed to keep it going. Well, that's Birmingham News, they're not going to keep, the school should keep it going. They got a newspaper. You should always keep that interest and that fire burning, man. And that's the problem. They let it all die because nobody kept the fire burning.
Chris, I'm gonna tell you right now, I hope that we do start to bring back some of the former glory, and I know that with the Blazer fans do appreciate everything that you guys did, because you did set the standards. You guys were the pioneers. You did start it, and that's part of the reason why I've got the podcast, is because I do want to share some of the stories, and that's why I was excited to have you on. And that's part of the goal, is to share the stories. And I know the Blazer faithful, especially the diehards that have been here since day one, they will never let it die. So thank you for everything. But I do have a couple more questions for you.
Go ahead. I'm fine, man. You see, I'm passionate about this, man. I really
I know. I no doubt.
Man. I live it. I'm trying not to leave nothing out.
Well, you coached for UAB, or you coached for a long time. You were a grad assistant. You were a grad assistant at UAB. You were an assistant coach at Jackson State for 14 years. You came back to UAB as an assistant under Mike Anderson, and you coached at Miles. What were some of your favorite memories from coaching?
Oh man, I got plenty of memories. When I started coaching, the one reason I started coaching, because Coach Bartow asked me to be a coach. And that's why I didn't go back and play in the CBA, because I was, and the Chicago Bulls were looking at me. They were calling Coach Bartow every day, but he said, well, he decided he's going to be a coach. So I stopped playing to become a coach. So I was there with Steve Mitch and Jerome Mintz and them. I was there with them. And I enjoy Steve and them. You know, I watched them play because they came behind us and they did some wonderful things. You know, they didn't do what we did in the NCAA, but they had a wonderful career. They won the Great Alaska Shootout. They never won the conference or nothing like that, but they did win the tournament. And then a couple of times they got at-large bid. But I wanted to see the other side, the coaching and things. And Coach Bartow always said I had a coach's mind. I was a graduate assistant at UAB. I went back and Coach Bartow, I was on the staff. I got my degree. And then I became a part-time coach. So I saw about the players. I trained the players, worked them out, made sure they went to class. That was some of my duties. And then I went to Jackson State with John Prince. Well, John was a full-time assistant at UAB. So when he was always on the road, because I couldn't go on the road, then I used to have to do scouting reports. I had to get Jerome and Archie Johnson and those guys ready for the game. And I helped make Jerome a better player, especially his junior, senior year under my tutors. So I left there with John Prince and went to Jackson State as a full-time assistant, which is a historical Black college who got a ton of tradition in athletics, you know, football and basketball. The great Walter Payton, Robert Brazile, all these Hall of Fame football players. But not only that, the Purvis Shorts of the world and Danny Manning father. They had so many great basketball players. Well, I was there for 3 years with John Prince, and he left and he came back to UAB. So this guy named Andy Stogler, who recruited Mike Anderson to Tulsa, who played for Nola Richardson, he kept me on in the staff, you know, on his staff. And we end up having doing one of the best jobs in HBCU ever done. We had this guy by the name of Lindsey Hunter who played for us. Lindsey played in the NBA. He played with the Detroit Pistons. He was drafted, he was the 10th player picked overall in the draft, and he went to the Detroit Pistons. Then he got traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. He won 2 NBA championships, one with the Pistons, one with the Lakers. But Lindsey, he kind of took us for a ride. We played in the Rainbow Classic. And the tournament, they had Kansas, Michigan, Southwest Louisiana. And at Jackson State, we ended up being 3rd in that tournament with the Fab Five and all those guys. Lindsey hit 48 points against Kansas. And he ended up being the MVP of the Rainbow Classic. So Lindsey made a name for himself. We beat Tulane when they were ranked. We beat Connecticut. We were the last team to beat Connecticut on their home floor in the NIT because we lost out in our tournament to Southern University to go to the NCAA. So we had to go to the NIT. And we went to the NIT and we upset Connecticut on their home floor. Lindsey hit 39 points. So I enjoyed that, you know, being at a historical HBCU. We didn't have everything. We rode the buses a lot. We didn't have a big recruiting budget, and we competed. And we went to the major tournaments and we competed. So I stayed there 14 years. I was settled there. Had an opportunity to come back early to UAB, but I didn't. And that's after Coach Bartow had retired. So then Mike Anderson, Nola Richardson retired, and Mike and I played against each other in high school. We both from Birmingham. So he knew I wanted to come back home to Birmingham, and he hired me. So I got an opportunity to work on this staff. The most enjoyable game that I experienced with UAB as a coach was when Mo Finley hit that shot against Kentucky. Kentucky was the #1 seed overall, and we played them in Cincinnati. We had played the University of Washington. Boy, they had a great team. I didn't know those players. They had about 4 teams on that, on 4 players on that team to make the NBA. They had the little short guy, I forgot his name.
Nate Robinson. Nate Robinson.
They had that guy Roy, I think, the forward. He got injured. And but he was real good in the NBA till he got injured. So, you know, we were blowing them out, and they came back. They almost beat us in overtime, and Squeaky just dominated the guy. So we ended up playing Kentucky. They were the #1 seed. And we always, for some reason, UAB always is giving Kentucky problems. And this particular game, a kid I recruited named Gabe Kennedy. And I was asking Mike to get a ball more to Gabe, which he did. And the Twins made one of the beautiful plays that ever, I don't know why I didn't get an ESPY award, when they threw the ball over their head to each other.
Blind pass.
That's right. But the game-winning shot Mo Finley made, and we seen Mo make this shot a ton. And Mo can shoot, man, especially when he get on the road, man. But he pump faked the guy, and he flew by, and Mo bounced that ball. We all stood up on the bench. We knew that was key. So we ended up upsetting Kentucky, man. And man, Tubby, man, he was so hurt and broken. And that was a bigger win that game than the when we beat Kentucky. So I'm on the staff. We didn't beat Kentucky twice. We didn't upset Kentucky twice, you know. And that game now, Mo and them had so much media down here that we couldn't even practice, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. They had way more media than we did, and we couldn't even practice. But to be a part of that, and somebody had that article when we had upset Kentucky, and somebody brought it out, and so wow, you know, that was great there. That was a big win for UAB, and then we beat LSU in, I want to say Utah. And they had Big Baby. They had like 5 first rounders on their team. And the Twins, you know, in that altitude, Big Baby were getting tired and we pressed them, but we ended up beating them. And so I've been a part of a lot of wins at UAB as a player and as a coach. Nobody in the history of UAB has been a part of as many wins as I have as a player and as a coach, you know. When I think about my record, just coaching and playing in the NCAA, man, it's phenomenal, man. It's phenomenal. And you know, at Jackson State, we went to like 3 NCAAs there. So I've been about, I don't know, in my little short coaching career, out of 30 years, I've probably been to about 15 NCAAs.
You gotta start calling you Mr. March.
Yeah, remember, I don't know if I told you what Coach Bartow used to call us. Maybe I didn't see it. Coach Bartow used to call our team the February and March team, because when it became February, we didn't lose that many games. And then we was a different team, man. We played, we blew people out, man. We competed, man. You know, I just see them teams get blown out by 15 and 20 points. I'd be like, man, come on. Brigham Young came down there and just blew us out, man. You know, it's just like, I mean, we had pride, man. And Oliver was a great player. One thing about Oliver, he would make the shots you needed to make. I mean, he would never have real bad games. You know, he wouldn't go 3 for 20. Some of these guys go 3 for 25. If I go 3 out of 8, I'm gonna stop shooting. Let somebody else, you know, do their magic. But we just had the right chemistry, and it was at the right time.
So do you still keep up with your former teammates, and which ones do you still keep up with?
I keep up all, you know, me and Oliver talk every other day. Norman Ankrum and I talk every other day. Jonah Nicholas and I, most of them, all of them, you know, the ones that are alive, you know. The only one that kind of deceased was Donnie Spear. You know, Coach Bartow used to call us the 6 seniors. So the 5 of us still around. And even Jonah, he was coaching women basketball at St. John. So right now he's trying to get back into coaching. But we was a close-knit group. You know, we all talk once or twice a week.
Okay.
Because what we shared, man, was very important. A lot of people don't know that the inside, a lot of us made sacrifice, you know. And I know I made big sacrifice, man. I could have scored. I could have tried to outshoot Oliver, but we wouldn't have won. That wasn't my role, you know. My role was to keep everybody involved, get rebounds, and contribute that way. And that's where I work. I was the guy that everybody looked to because I was like the coach on the floor. Oliver and I were both co-captains those 2 successful years. So we was the leaders of the team. And but yeah, we stay in close contact. You know, we've been doing that for 40 years.
So Chris, how is life now?
Life is good. You know, I'm retired right now. I might have to start back working with this inflation and gas prices, but it's good. You know, I'm enjoying life. You know, I started coaching early, and I could never find a job that I really wanted, and I started early. But a lot of the guys that I knew in coaching, they retired. They were older than me, so a lot of them in their 80s and whatever. The only young guy was Mike Anderson that I really around my age and stuff like that. You know, when he left and went to Missouri, that's why I had to get the job at Miles College. And I was at Miles College for about 3 years. Some people say I shouldn't have took it. Some people say, it was a mistake, but no job is a mistake. I was a head coach. And when you talked about my coaching career over at Miles College, no, we didn't win the championship, but Montevallo was like one of the top D2 programs at that time. And when I took over the Miles College job, I beat Montevallo. They were ranked, I think, number 3. And we ended up upsetting them. And then the Gulf South at that time, Delta State, we played that tournament, we beat them. So all the ranked teams and the teams in our league, I beat them. But I got upset in our tournament. So, and then, my career kind of went down. But so I left Miles College. I was out of work for a couple of years. Then I went to Alcorn State University, and we got fired. We didn't really turn it around. So I started working with nonprofit agency, and now I'm retired. Okay. Might have to go back to work, but I enjoy coaching, man. But coaching is different. Kids are different now. You can't do the things you used to do back in the past. I was old school. I believe you play hard, you work hard, no excuses, and things like that. But now you get a kid. Most of the kids come out of high school, they got 3 babies. They already got problems. They got so many issues now that when I got into coaching, coaches didn't believe. They didn't recruit people that had all these issues now. But, most of the good players, they got issues. But you got to have them to win, You can't win. I asked Billy Packer. I said, if you get to the Elite 8 or the Sweet 16, he said, if you get to those rounds, you got some good players because you just can't get there without good players. And that's true. Everybody like, well, they just got lucky. No, you don't get there twice. No, you got to have some players. And I think we had some players. We didn't have I was in the top 100 when I came out of high school. I was all city. I went all state, but in Birmingham, all city is just like all state. And I made all the things around here, but but in coaching, it's totally different, man. I don't see how Saban, I don't see how Mike Krzyzewski did it for so long, because every year it's a different animal with the different rules and regulations and what you can do, what you can't do now. And then with the kids, man, they have so many issues, man. Parents got issues. And I hope the NIL will help them for us financially. Yeah. But you have to be, it's a lot of problems.
Well, Chris, I have one more question for you. It's a lighthearted question to kind of keep you on your toes, but it's kind of a cliche question, but it's something just to see, let my listeners get to know you a little bit better. But if you could have dinner with 3 people, any 3 people in history, who would you want to have dinner with?
Oh man, Muhammad Ali, because that was my idol. I love Muhammad Ali. It wasn't a basketball. It was Muhammad Ali. Mm-hmm. Another one would be John Wooden. I love John Wooden. Everything I read about John Wooden and coaching. And the third one would be Nick Saban. I like championship coaches because, and for people who do it for so long, what are their formula? What can they do? But those would be the 3 people I would love to have dinner with, just to pick their brains,
Well, that's an awesome 3.
Yeah, all of them got different professions. If you was in my house today, you'll see Muhammad Ali stuff. You'll see John Wooden stuff. You'll see Nick Saban stuff. Because for them, they're not no one-hit wonders, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They do whatever they did it for a period of 10 years or more. And that's just hard to do, man, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that. And I'm a sports fanatic. I love sports, man.
Same here.
I'm a sport. I mean, what Coach Bartow did. See, we went to the Hall of Fame with Coach Bartow, went in the Hall of Fame with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Me, Oliver, and Steve, we flew up with Coach Bartow. I mean, what Coach Bartow done, he took 3 different teams to the Elite Eight. Nobody had done it at that particular time. He already had took 2 different teams to the Final Four. And then he took a program and even have a basketball. And in 4 years, almost had them in the Final Four. That would never happen again, man. I'm glad to be a part of his history, because that's one thing I know that won't ever happen again. A program that have no basketball athlete. You know, you see some programs that went from D2 to D1 or D3 to D2, then D1, but UAB didn't have nothing. They didn't even have a basketball. And this guy came in and just took it to a level, and he elevated. I mean, Alabama and Auburn had to get off their butts. He elevated. I mean, even though CM Newton and Alabama, they started it, and but Coach Bartow raised the level. You know, they were just trying to get to the NCAA. He was trying to get to the Final Four, and that's just hard to do, man. I can go on and on, man, but when you look back on it, and that's what the UAB fans don't realize. That wasn't easy to do. You know, what Mike Anderson did. Mike Anderson came close. Now he did doing what Coach Bartow did. He went to the Sweet 16 and he almost went again. But it's going to be hard for a team to go to 7 straight NCAAs at UAB. I mean, especially with the conference that they're in. Maybe the new conference might help. But I mean, Coach Bartow, man, and you just think about basketball at UAB. Went to school, they had 4 buildings. Look at UAB now, man. It's unbelievable. You know, it's attractive enough to get good players. I mean, it was attractive enough they were getting good players without having all the stuff they have now. But, you know, it's just unreal. And when I tell people the story of UAB and how it transpired and I was a part of it, they think I'm lying. They're like, man, no, they didn't do all that, man. Y'all had to have a basketball or something. No, they didn't even have a basketball. You know? I mean, we had to practice over in Bell Gym. Most of our practice, we just played games down there, you know? But we had to practice at Bell Gym. Walk flow, get cold in there. You know, we didn't have anything. The locker room, I mean, and you had to compete against teams that had Division I program. I came from a Division I program. You see what I'm saying? I came from a program that had Walt Frazier played there and Mike Glenn, and you see what I'm saying? I didn't come from an average program. I came from a program, and that's the difference, man. And so it's just every time I think about it, man, to say I was a part of it. I mean, I was glad that I was a part of that, man, that era and during that time.
Well, Chris, we are very appreciative of you, and we are very appreciative of you and Coach Bartow and all the original Blazers. I'm going to have to get some more of you guys on, but thank you so much for all you guys did, and thank you so much for sharing your stories. I know that I enjoyed it a lot, and I know my listeners are going to enjoy it too. So just thank you so much for all this. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, I'm glad to be on the show, man. I'm passionate. I enjoyed it, man. You bringing back memories. I enjoyed the question that you asked, and I just hope it just came off. I know my voice rises a little bit, but I hope everything came off the way and where your listener can enjoy it, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ride. I would give nothing in the world for what we did back in the day. I wouldn't change nothing. I mean, all the rights in China they would give me and say, just change it. I wouldn't change a thing. I enjoy I enjoyed it. I really did.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you again, and go Blazers.
Thank you, Will. Go Blazers.
All right. Thanks again so much to Chris for his time and sharing some great stories. I know that we all appreciate the hard work and the bar that those early teams set because they put UAB on the map. I appreciate all that Chris did, and again, for coming on to share those stories with us. Again, no This Week in Blazer History segment this week. I'm saving that for next week when I do a postseason special episode covering notable NCAA tournament trips by the UAB men's and women's teams. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks again for listening. Be sure to follow my social pages at Dragons Den EFEL on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Good night, and go Blazers.